I feel like I need an intro song. We've been watching Zootopia nonstop. Every Friday is Zootopia Day. And then in between Friday movie night, Marvel only wants to listen to Shakira, like the Shakira songs from Zootopia. This is the one.
I'm Gazelle. Welcome to Zootopia.
And now the best part is when we go to the zoo, which is sometimes up to 2 to 3 times a week. We live by the zoo, so we go to the zoo a lot. Marvel wants to see the giraffes. She believes that Shakira is a giraffe. I know she's a gazelle.
I don't think we have giraffes at our zoo. Do we have giraffes at our zoo?
And so there are no giraffes at the zoo, and that is deeply disappointing.
Rolling forward, Dr. Sister Science Facts.
Well, welcome back to the Rolling Forward podcast.
I'm Dr. Alicia Rolin.
I'm Dr. Stephanie Rolin.
I'm a pediatrician.
I'm a psychiatrist.
We're both clinicians and researchers.
And we're here today with this episode coming from something that I feel like just keeps happening. But every time it happens, it's confusing in the exact same way.
You go to the pharmacy for something like super normal, and they're like, yeah, we don't have that.
And it's not like a rare medication. It's something you've gotten 100 times.
And they're like, try another pharmacy.
Which is my absolute favorite errand, going from pharmacy to pharmacy in DC.
And then you realize that it's your entire afternoon.
And then it turns into this whole spiral. How many doses do we have left? How long are we going to stretch it? Do we need to change medications?
Is this about to be a really big problem?
And what's weird is that it'll feel random every time. There doesn't feel like there's a predictable pattern to it.
It's happening enough that it clearly is not random anymore. Like when it was just Ativan at the hospital, fine. But now it's Ativan and morphine and metronidazole and every other thing in the world.
And we've experienced that as prescribers and as patients, where we see it on both sides, leading to today's question of, why do medications just disappear sometimes? Boo, they're gone.
We're going to walk through this in 4 parts. 1, how the system is actually set up. 2, what actually is causing these shortages. 3, why it feels like it keeps happening over and over again. And finally, what you can actually do when this happens.
So let's start at the beginning.
Rolling forward, Dr. Sister Science Facts.
So why is this even a thing? Shouldn't medication just be available?
That's what it feels like. You think that, like, you get a medication prescribed, you go to the pharmacy, it gets filled. But the key to this is actually how the system is built. Most medications in the US are generic.
Which is a good thing. They're more affordable, they're more accessible, there's more access.
That's the upside. But here's the part that people don't think about. Generic medications have very low profit.
So companies are not making that much money on them.
And that shapes everything, because if something isn't very profitable, they're not going to invest extra. They don't build backup manufacturing, they don't keep large stockpiles, they don't maintain extra capacity just in case.
Everything is running pretty tight.
And that means the system is super efficient, but also very fragile.
And most people don't see that part because most of the time, the system works. So you might assume that there's a lot of cushion behind the scenes, but there isn't.
Here's the part that really surprised me. For a lot of medications, there are only very few manufacturers making them.
Like, how few?
Like 1, 2, maybe 3.
That is not a lot.
So everything is fine until it's not.
So that's the system. Let's talk about what actually pushes it over the edge. Because I think most people are going to assume it's demand. More people want the medication.
That's the intuitive explanation. Too many people want the medication. And that does happen sometimes. But the most common cause is actually manufacturing or quality problems.
Like what?
Things like contamination, which we saw with formula. Things like equipment failure, failing inspections, or a plant shutting down. These aren't always dramatic events. They're usually pretty routine issues.
Which is kind of the scary part.
Because routine problems in fragile systems become very big problems.
And here's where that limited number of manufacturers starts to really matter, because if one manufacturer goes down, even temporarily, the entire supply can drop really quickly.
And when it does, there's no backup system to absorb it. When you have two manufacturers making one medication and one plant goes down, you've lost 50% of the manufacturers making that one medication. So it's not that we don't know how to make the drug. It's not that we don't have the process of making the drug. It's a capacity issue.
And as a psychiatrist, the classic example that comes to mind for me is ADHD medications.
Oh my God. ADHD medications. It has been a struggle for so many families to fill their prescriptions.
And there's this narrative that overprescribing is driving the demand. And sure, there's been a change in demand, and that's part of what's happening.
But it's not the full story, because what actually is happening is, in addition to that demand increase, the supply has really struggled to keep up. Manufacturing has remained limited, and there are regulatory constraints about making controlled substances.
It's everything stacking on top of each other. And because the system doesn't have flexibility, that stacking effect really matters.
So, why does this feel like it keeps happening over and over again with so many different medications?
As we talked about, this system doesn't have much buffer. So when anything changes, even a little, you'll feel it quickly. And that can be a small demand spike, a short delay in manufacturing, or a disruption in supply chain.
And this is where the global stuff really comes in.
A lot of the drug supply chain is global, where ingredients, manufacturing, and shipping are done internationally. So disruptions happening anywhere in the world can ripple through. And this is where it starts to connect to what's happening right now, because I've been hearing this a lot more from my patients recently. And there's a lot of attention on the Strait of Hormuz because of the rising tensions involving Iran in that region.
That sounds like it's very far away from my corner store pharmacy where I'm picking up my medication.
Totally. And to be clear, this is not causing any immediate shortages, but here's a simple way to think about it. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow shipping route that goes between Iran and Oman, and a huge amount of global fuel and cargo move through.
Basically a bottleneck.
And when there's tension involving Iran there, shipping can get slower, more expensive, or less predictable.
And that affects medications how?
Because the drug supply chain depends on moving ingredients and medications around the world on these tight timelines. So if shipping gets even a little disrupted, things are going to move slower, costs are going to go up, and supply is going to get tighter.
So it's not that medications disappear overnight.
Right. This is not causing any immediate shortage, but it is adding pressure onto a system that is already thin with limited manufacturers and not much backup supply. So even this little extra friction can show up really quickly.
It's not the cause of the issue, but it definitely is stress on an already stressed system.
So what you're seeing at the pharmacy, this is about the system absorbing pressure in real time, with the Strait of Hormuz being one example of all of these types of pressures that can happen, because there are global conflicts globally.
And there are also natural disasters. When Puerto Rico was struck by a horrible hurricane, it disrupted manufacturing of normal saline, and it became difficult to order fluids.
So these headlines that you might be seeing about natural disasters, global conflicts, regional issues, that they might not seem like they're relevant to you standing in line at CVS waiting for your medication, but these are the ways that we can start to see it because of this really thin system.
So let's go back to that moment. You're at CVS. They don't have your medication. What do you do next?
Yeah, this is the part that matters. It matters to me. It matters to families. It matters to my patients. First, my advice is that if something has been hard to find in the past, do not wait until you're completely out of the medication before refilling.
That's easier said than done, but it's important.
Give yourself a little buffer. And second, calling more than one pharmacy really does help, even though it is so annoying. And I understand that it's annoying, and I don't like calling people either, but availability will actually vary much more than people expect.
You'll get very used to knowing what elevator music CVS uses versus Walgreens. But two pharmacies across the street from each other can have totally different supplies.
Third, loop your clinician in early. We want to know. And sometimes there are alternatives that we can prescribe, but it's going to take time for us to arrange that.
And how can you figure out if this is a national problem, if this is a regional problem, or if it's just your one pharmacy?
There are some great resources like the US FDA shortage database. We'll link those in our show notes. You can take a look there, and that will help you understand if this is a broader issue affecting pharmacies nationally, in which case maybe calling around won't be that helpful, or if this is a more limited issue.
What's important to know is that it's not your fault, even if you didn't look early before the bottle was empty. But it might become your next project this week.
Unfortunately, not your fault, but perhaps your project. So the takeaway is medications are not disappearing randomly. There is a system that's been built that's efficient, low cost, but fragile. And when anything stresses that system, it is going to show up as a shortage.
So the system works perfectly until, well, it doesn't.
Oh, and I'm on this FDA drug shortage database now, and I'm seeing how many things are on here. And
It's a little terrifying.
yeah. But with that, thank you for tuning in. That's our show for today.
Rolling forward, Dr. Sister Science Facts.
I'm Dr. Alicia Rolin.
I'm Dr. Stephanie Rolin.
If you enjoyed today's episode, give us a 5-star review.
Share it with a friend, share it with a parent, share it with your doctor,
Share it with the person standing next to you in line at CVS.
waiting for your prescriptions.
You can always hit us up on social or send us an email at ROLIN_show. That's rollinforwardshow@gmail.com.
And we'll see you next week.
Rolling forward, Dr. Sister Science Facts.
So,
Future episode. Why do toddlers have very bad taste
such bad
in
taste.
food, music, and movies?
That fire truck song, if I have to hear that one more time. Oh, the ABC. She wants to listen to the ABC. I mean, it's not even a banger. It's just the
The
ABCs.
Snoop Dogg ABC specifically.